Chapter 1: The First Quiet Encounter. The first encounter with this painting rarely arrives with shock. It comes instead with a slow tightening of attention, as though the room itself has grown quieter. At a distance, the composition appears almost classical, even serene in its balance. The human eye is drawn first to the precision, the polished surfaces, the harmony of flesh and shadow. Only gradually does the subject reveal itself. What seems beautiful begins to unsettle. What feels controlled begins to burn. William-Adolphe Bouguereau's Dante and Virgil in Hell does not announce its violence loudly. It waits. It allows the viewer to approach under the assumption that this is another triumph of academic mastery, another demonstration of flawless anatomy and sculptural grace. And then, without warning, the realization settles in: this beauty is inseparable from cruelty. The elegance is bound tightly to suffering. One cannot be seen without the other. The eye descends first to the bodies. Two nude men, locked in a violent embrace, their muscles tense, their skin luminous even under infernal light. One sinks his teeth into the other's neck with a ferocity that feels almost intimate. The victim's body twists in agony, his ribs exposed, his knee driven into the flesh of his attacker as if instinct alone still fights for survival. Every tendon is alive. Every muscle is awake. Bouguereau's technical control is absolute, and that control makes the pain feel inescapably real. Above them, slightly removed, stand Dante and Virgil. They are clothed, composed, and eerily calm. Dante's face carries no horror, no revulsion. There is something gentler there, something contemplative. Virgil, the guide, stands beside him with the quiet authority of one who has seen this before. Their presence does not interrupt the violence below, it frames it. They do not intervene. They witness. And hovering above all of this, almost casually, is a demon. His arms are crossed. His posture relaxed. His expression is not cruel in any obvious way. It is worse than cruelty. It is satisfying. He watches as one might watch a familiar performance, amused by its inevitability. Hell, at this moment, is not chaos. It is ordered. It is a ritual. It is repetition. The longer one stands before the painting, the more difficult it becomes to separate admiration from discomfort. Bouguereau's skill demands respect. The surface of the canvas is immaculate. The bodies feel carved rather than painted, as if marble has learned how to breathe and suffer. And yet, this perfection serves a vision of eternal punishment. It forces the viewer into a strange complicity. To admire the painting is, in some small way, to share the demon's gaze. This tension is the painting's quiet power. It does not shout its meaning. It does not explain itself. It allows beauty to lure the viewer inward, and only then reveals the cost of that beauty. The horror is not sudden, it unfolds slowly, like a thought one wishes to push away but cannot. Bouguereau chose a precise moment from Dante's Divine Comedy, a moment that exists deep within the eighth circle of hell, the realm of the falsifiers. These are souls condemned not for simple violence or desire, but for deception, for the distortion of truth itself. Capocchio, the alchemist, is attacked by Gianni Schicchi, punished for impersonation. Their struggle is not merely physical. It is symbolic. Two lives defined by falsehood now consume one another endlessly, locked in an embrace stripped of identity, dignity, and rest. And yet, Bouguereau does not paint them as grotesque monsters. He paints them as idealized men, their bodies perfected, their forms elevated almost to the level of gods. This choice unsettles modern viewers perhaps more than any other. Why grant such beauty to the damned? Why allow hell to look so refined? The answer is not offered. The painting does not moralize. It does not reassure me. It simply presents the scene with unwavering clarity. In doing so, it reflects something uncomfortable about the human gaze. We are drawn to mastery. We linger on beauty even when it emerges from suffering. We admire form before we question meaning. Standing before this work, time behaves differently. Minutes stretch. The painting resists casual viewing. It asks for stillness. It asks for patience. The longer one looks, the more the figures seem to breathe. The tension between movement and stasis becomes palpable. This is a frozen moment, yet it feels endlessly ongoing. The violence has no beginning and no end. It simply is. There is also a curious tenderness hidden within the composition. Not tenderness between the fighting figures, but between the painting and the viewer. Bouguereau does not assault the senses. He invites them. The palette is controlled, the lighting soft despite the infernal setting. Even hell, in his hands, is rendered with restraint. This restraint gives the scene its haunting quality. It suggests that damnation need not be allowed to be absolute. At night, when the world is quiet and the mind less guarded, this painting feels especially alive. It echoes thoughts people rarely voice, the fear that beauty can coexist with cruelty, that intelligence and culture do not necessarily lead away from violence, that control and mastery can serve darkness just as easily as light. Bouguereau does not accuse the viewer of these thoughts. He simply allows them to surface. The first quiet encounter with Dante and Virgil in hell is therefore not merely visual. It is internal. It stirs a recognition that art is not always meant to comfort. Sometimes it exists to hold a mirror at an angle, showing us something we would rather not see directly. In this case, it reflects the unsettling truth that human beings have always found ways to aestheticize suffering, to frame it, polish it, and contemplate it from a safe distance. And so the viewer stands there, suspended between admiration and unease, between beauty and dread. The painting does not move, yet it does not release its hold. It waits, patient and silent, confident that once seen properly, it will remain. When you finally turn away, the room feels different. Quieter. Heavier. As if something unspoken has settled into the mind, preparing itself to return later, perhaps when sleep is near and defenses are low. This is how the journey begins, not with fire or screams, but with a calm, almost gentle descent. Chapter 2: The World It Emerged From. To understand how such a painting could exist, one must step carefully back into the world that produced it, a world that believed deeply in order, hierarchy, and the moral authority of inherited ideas. Mid-19th century France was not a place of artistic freedom as it is often imagined today. It was a culture governed by academies, salons, and strict definitions of what constituted greatness. Beauty was not subjective, it was measured, taught, and perfected through discipline. Art was expected to elevate, to instruct, and to reflect an ideal vision of humanity shaped by classical antiquity and Christian thought. This was a society standing between certainty and fracture. The Enlightenment had shaken traditional beliefs, revolutions had toppled monarchies, and industrialization was reshaping daily life with unsettling speed. Yet in the halls of official art, stability was still prized above all else. The Academy offered reassurance. It promised that through mastery of anatomy, composition, and historical subject matter, chaos could be held at bay. Paintings did not merely depict the past, they preserved a moral structure that many feared was slipping away. Religious narratives, especially those drawn from foundational texts like Dante's Divine Comedy, carried enormous cultural weight. They were not treated as distant allegories but as profound psychological maps of the human soul. Hell was not a metaphor in the modern sense. It was a moral landscape, a place where human choices were believed to take visible, eternal form. To paint hell was not to indulge in fantasy, but to engage with a deeply serious vision of justice and consequence. At the same time, the human body occupied a uniquely sacred position in academic art. Anatomy was studied with reverence. Muscles, bones, and flesh were considered expressions of divine order. To render the body perfectly was to honor creation itself. Even suffering, when depicted through idealized form, was thought capable of revealing higher truths. Pain became meaningful when framed by beauty. Disorder became intelligible when organized through composition. Bouguereau's world believed in this paradox without hesitation. Horror and refinement were not opposites. They were partners. The same culture that admired surgical precision and philosophical rigor also accepted public executions and rigid social stratification. Violence, when justified by moral systems, did not offend the eye. It instructed it. Dante's Inferno fit perfectly into this worldview. Written centuries earlier, it offered a meticulously organized vision of damnation, one where every sin had its place and every punishment reflected an inner truth about the sinner. This was not hell as chaos, but hell as logic. For a 19th-century academic painter, such a structure was irresistible. It mirrored the academy itself, hierarchical, exacting, and confident in its judgments. The specific episode Bouguereau chose, the struggle between Capocchio and Gianni Schicchi, would have been immediately recognized by educated viewers. These were not anonymous damned souls. They were figures defined by deception, intellectual fraud, and impersonation. Their punishment was not fire or torture, but endless violation of the self. Their bodies, once used to deceive, now became sites of exposure and vulnerability. In this sense, the scene resonated with contemporary anxieties about authenticity in a rapidly changing world. France in 1850 was obsessed with appearances. Social mobility was increasing, but with it came suspicion. Who truly belonged? Who was pretending? Who had earned their position, and who had forged it? The falsifiers of Dante's Hell mirrored these fears perfectly. They embodied the dread that surfaces and performances could conceal moral emptiness. Art, therefore, became a place to stabilize these fears. By returning to a medieval poet and cloaking his vision in classical beauty, painters like Bouguereau reassured viewers that moral order still existed, even if it had to be imagined beneath the earth. Hell was terrible, yes, but it was also fair. Every muscle, every gesture, every punishment followed a rule. The salon audience that first encountered Dante and Virgil in Hell would have admired it not only for its technical brilliance, but for its intellectual seriousness. This was art that demonstrated learning. It showed command of literature, anatomy, theology, and history all at once. To stand before it was to participate in a shared cultural language, one that valued restraint, clarity, and moral confidence. Yet beneath this surface certainty, unease already stirred. Romanticism was challenging academic control. Artists were beginning to explore emotion, subjectivity, and the irrational. The idea that suffering could not always be explained, that chaos might exist without meaning, was slowly entering the cultural bloodstream. Bouguereau, often portrayed as a defender of tradition, painted at this exact point of tension. His hell is controlled, but it is not comforting. It is organized, but it is deeply intimate. The violence does not erupt, it presses inward. It forces the viewer to confront not spectacle, but proximity. The bodies are close. The pain is tactile. This intimacy hints at something the academic world struggled to acknowledge, that beneath order lies desire, fear, and aggression that cannot be fully disciplined. In this way, the world that produced the painting is present within it, not just historically, but psychologically. It is a world clinging to ideals of perfection while sensing their fragility. A world that believed beauty could still contain darkness, even as that darkness grew more difficult to ignore. To look at Dante and Virgil in Hell is to stand at the edge of this cultural moment, where certainty has not yet collapsed, but has begun to tremble. The painting does not announce that tremor openly. It encases it in flawless flesh and classical balance. But once seen, it cannot be unseen. This is the soil from which the painting emerged, a disciplined world, a moral universe built on hierarchy and belief, quietly haunted by the suspicion that order alone might not be enough to save the human soul. Chapter 3: The Artist's State of Mind. William-Adolphe Bouguereau approached painting not as an act of expression, but as an act of control. His world was one of discipline, routine, and unyielding standards. He believed that mastery was not merely a skill, but a moral position. To paint well was to think clearly, to see accurately, and to submit oneself to a lineage of knowledge stretching back through centuries. Emotion, in his view, was something to be guided, not unleashed. By the time he painted Dante and Virgil in Hell, Bouguereau had already absorbed the full weight of academic tradition. He had studied relentlessly, drawing the human body until it became second nature, internalized like breath. Anatomy for him was not dramatic, it was precise. Every muscle existed for a reason. Every gesture followed a logic. This certainty gave him confidence, but it also demanded obedience. There was little room for improvisation. The hand served the eye, and the eye served an ideal. Yet Bouguereau was not emotionally distant in the way his critics sometimes suggest. His restraint concealed intensity rather than the absence of it. The discipline he practiced was a way of containing forces he clearly understood very well. Violence, desire, cruelty, beauty, these were not foreign to him. They were simply not allowed to dominate the surface of the work. They had to be structured, refined, made legible. Choosing Dante was not accidental. Bouguereau admired systems, philosophical, moral, anatomical. Dante's hell offered him a universe where every human failing had a place, where chaos was arranged into circles, rules, and consequences. This structure allowed Bouguereau to explore extreme human states without surrendering to disorder. Hell became a laboratory for control. The specific moment he selected reveals much about his inner focus. Rather than depict vast landscapes of suffering or crowds of tortured souls, he chose intimacy. 2 bodies. 1 violent act. A frozen instant of struggle. This narrowing of attention suggests an artist deeply interested in the mechanics of human conflict, both physical and psychological. The painting is not about hell as a place. It is about what happens when identity collapses and instinct takes over. Bouguereau's insistence on idealized anatomy, even in damnation, reveals a belief that the human body retains its dignity regardless of moral failure. This belief is not sentimental. It is philosophical. The body, in his view, remains a vessel of order even when the soul has fallen into chaos. To deform it would be to surrender to ugliness, and ugliness for Bouguereau was a form of intellectual failure. There is also an undeniable element of pride embedded in the work. Bouguereau knew exactly what he was capable of, and he did not hide it. The flawless rendering of muscle under strain, the precise tension of hands and teeth, the careful orchestration of light across skin, all of this announces mastery. But this pride is not hollow. It is defensive. In a world beginning to question academic authority, Bouguereau asserts, through this painting, that tradition still holds power. And yet, the presence of the demon complicates this assertion. The demon's calm, his crossed arms, his almost amused detachment, feel uncomfortably close to the artist's own position. Both observe suffering from a place of control. Both are removed from the chaos they oversee. This parallel does not condemn Bouguereau, but it reveals an awareness of distance. The artist knows he is not inside the struggle. He is above it, shaping it. This awareness lends the painting its unsettling honesty. Bouguereau does not pretend to suffer with his subjects. He acknowledges his role as observer, as arranger, as one who transforms pain into form. There is no false empathy here. Only clarity. At the same time, the inclusion of Dante and Virgil, figures of reason, poetry, and guidance, suggests Bouguereau's longing for intellectual companionship. Dante is not screaming. He is watching, learning, absorbing. This is the artist's ideal stance, to witness darkness without being consumed by it, to understand without surrendering composure. In Bouguereau's inner world, beauty was not the opposite of cruelty. It was the framework that allowed cruelty to be examined without dissolving into chaos. His painting reflects a mind deeply invested in boundaries, between emotion and intellect, between form and impulse, between observation and participation. This state of mind was already under siege. Critics accused him of coldness, of artificiality, of refusing modern feeling. Yet Dante and Virgil in Hell suggest something far more complex. It reveals an artist who understood modern anxiety but refused to express it through fragmentation. Instead, he compressed it, refined it, and locked it into perfect form. The result is a painting that feels tense beneath its polish, like a clenched hand beneath silk. Bouguereau's calm is not indifference. It is vigilance. He stands guard over chaos, insisting that it can still be seen, measured, and rendered without surrendering the human capacity for order. This is the mind behind the painting, disciplined, proud, controlled, and quietly aware that control itself is always under threat. Chapter 5 are symbols that speak without words. At first glance, Bouguereau's precision appears purely technical, as though the painting were concerned only with form and accuracy. Yet the longer one remains with it, the more evident it becomes that every detail carries symbolic weight. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is decorative. Each gesture, each shadow, each exposed muscle operates as a quiet language, speaking without explanation or insistence. The most immediate symbol is the nakedness of the damned. In academic art, nudity often signifies ideal beauty, a return to classical purity. Here, however, it signifies exposure. Capocchio and Gianni Schicchi are stripped not for admiration, but for truth. Their bodies reveal everything: strength, vulnerability, tension, and failure. There is no clothing to suggest status, profession, or era. In hell, identity collapses into flesh. The sins that once hid behind roles and names are now etched directly into the body's struggle. The act of biting, too, is deeply symbolic. This is not a distant or impersonal form of violence. It is intimate, invasive, and regressive. Teeth replace weapons. Reason gives way to instinct. The bite suggests a return to something primitive, a reversal of human progress. For men condemned for intellectual deceit, this punishment is especially cruel. Their cleverness has abandoned them. Only animal desperation remains. The tension of muscles carries meaning beyond anatomy. Bouguereau renders each strain with obsessive clarity, transforming physical exertion into psychological revelation. These bodies are locked in perpetual effort, yet that effort leads nowhere. The muscles do not build strength or achieve escape. They exist only to sustain suffering. This endless exertion mirrors the inner state of the falsifiers, lives spent maintaining illusions, now translated into bodies maintaining pain. Light plays an equally important role. It does not descend from heaven, nor does it erupt from fire. It is soft, almost neutral, illuminating the scene without judgment. This impartial light suggests that hell, in Dante's vision, is not fueled by divine rage, but by moral clarity. Nothing is hidden. Everything is visible. The light exposes rather than punishes. Above the struggle, the demon's relaxed posture introduces a chilling contrast. His crossed arms signal closure, finality. There is nothing left to do here. The outcome is settled. His smile, subtle and contained, suggests familiarity. This is not a moment of excitement, but of routine. The demon symbolizes the normalization of suffering, the way cruelty becomes ordinary when repeated endlessly. Dante and Virgil, by contrast, embody stillness. Their clothing separates them from the chaos below, symbolizing reason, culture, and narrative continuity. Dante's gaze is especially significant. He looks without flinching, but also without cruelty. His expression suggests comprehension rather than judgment. In this, he becomes a symbol of the human desire to understand suffering rather than simply react to it. The spatial arrangement reinforces these symbolic roles. The damned are low and tangled, the poets upright and composed, the demon elevated and detached. This vertical order is not merely compositional balance, it is a moral and psychological hierarchy. It suggests that awareness, whether compassionate or cruel, creates distance from suffering. Even the background, often overlooked, carries meaning. It is not richly detailed. There are no elaborate infernal landscapes, no flames or grotesque architecture. This emptiness directs attention inward, toward the figures themselves. Hell is not presented as an external environment, but as a condition enacted through bodies and relationships. Color, too, speaks quietly. The palette is restrained, dominated by flesh tones, muted shadows, and controlled contrasts. There is no visual excess. This restraint amplifies the impact of violence. Without dramatic color cues, the scene feels disturbingly calm. The absence of spectacle forces the viewer to confront the content directly, without emotional manipulation. Perhaps the most unsettling symbol is the painting's beauty itself. The flawless execution becomes a symbol of human capacity, the ability to refine, perfect, and aestheticize even the most brutal realities. Bouguereau does not critique this capacity openly. He demonstrates it. In doing so, he asks an unspoken question: what does it mean to find beauty in suffering, and what does that say about the observer? These symbols do not demand interpretation. They do not point outward or instruct. They simply exist, layered into the painting's surface and structure. Their power lies in their subtlety. They speak slowly, revealing themselves over time, often when the viewer is least prepared to hear them. As the painting continues to work on the mind, these silent symbols begin to resonate beyond the canvas. They echo ideas about exposure, identity, normalization of cruelty, and the uneasy relationship between understanding and detachment. Bouguereau does not provide a key to decode them. He trusts the viewer's patience. And in that trust, the painting deepens. It becomes not just an image to be seen, but a presence to be lived with, one that continues to speak long after the eyes have moved on. Chapter 6: Other Visions of the Same Idea. Bouguereau's vision of Dante's hell does not exist in isolation. It enters a long conversation that spans centuries, one in which artists, poets, and thinkers have returned again and again to the same source, each time revealing something different about their own era. By placing Dante and Virgil in hell alongside other interpretations of the Inferno, its unique character becomes clearer, not through contrast alone, but through the quiet decisions Bouguereau refused to make. Earlier visual interpretations of Dante often leaned toward spectacle. Medieval illuminations filled the page with crowded scenes of torment, their figures twisted into grotesque forms, their punishments exaggerated for moral clarity. These images were designed to instruct through fear. They emphasize difference between the righteous and the damned, between order and chaos. The human body, in these visions, was often distorted to signal moral failure. Centuries later, artists like Sandro Botticelli approached Dante with a different intention. Botticelli's drawings of the Inferno are intricate, linear, and architectural. Hell becomes a map, a carefully layered structure descending into darkness. The figures within it are small, almost secondary to the vast design. This approach reflects a Renaissance fascination with order and proportion. The suffering is present, but it is absorbed into a larger intellectual framework. By the Romantic era, interpretations shifted again. Artists such as Eugene Delacroix embraced emotional intensity, movement, and psychological drama. Delacroix as the bark of Dante pulses with terror and desperation. The damned claw at the boat, their bodies contorted, their faces screaming. Here, hell is chaotic, unstable, driven by overwhelming emotion. The viewer is pulled into the panic, almost feeling the water and the screams. Bouguereau's painting responds to all of these traditions, yet aligns fully with none. Unlike medieval visions, he does not deform the body. Unlike Botticelli, he does not prioritize structure over flesh. Unlike Delacroix, he resists emotional excess. Instead, he isolates a single moment and refines it to an almost unbearable clarity. This restraint is his defining departure. Where others dramatize hell, Bouguereau normalizes it. The violence does not explode, it persists. The suffering does not overwhelm the viewer, it waits. In this way, his hell feels less like a warning and more like a condition, something that exists not only in myth, but in human behavior itself. Other artists who depicted damnation often emphasized divine judgment. Angels, flames, and cosmic forces dominate the scene. Bouguereau removes most of these elements. His hell feels self-sustaining. The punishment arises from the damned themselves. The demon oversees, but does not intervene. The system runs smoothly, almost indifferently. This approach reflects a broader 19th century shift towards psychological interpretation. Hell becomes less a place imposed from above and more a state generated from within. Bouguereau's falsifiers are not struck by lightning or dragged by beasts. They attack each other. Their punishment mirrors their lives. Deception turns inward. Violence becomes cyclical. Even when compared to other academic painters, Bouguereau's choice stands out. Many of his contemporaries favored historical scenes that celebrated heroism, sacrifice, or moral clarity. When they depicted suffering, it was often ennobled, framed as tragedy with redemptive potential. In Dante and Virgil in Hell, there is no redemption. There is no transformation. The scene is static in its despair. This refusal of narrative progression separates the painting from traditional storytelling. Most depictions of hell rely on sequence, descent, punishment, judgment. Bouguereau eliminates sequence entirely. He presents an eternal present, a moment without before or after. This timelessness aligns the painting less with illustration and more with meditation. Even modern interpretations of Dante often emphasize existential themes, alienation, absurdity, rebellion against meaning. Bouguereau does not rebel. He accepts the system fully. And yet, by accepting it so completely, he exposes its unsettling implications. A perfectly ordered hell leaves no room for mercy. It functions flawlessly, and that perfection becomes its own horror. In this way, Bouguereau's painting converses not only with past artists, but with future ones as well. Its quiet intensity anticipates modern discomfort with systems that operate smoothly while producing suffering. It suggests that the most frightening visions are not chaotic, but efficient. To view Dante and Virgil in hell among other interpretations is to recognize its singular calm. It does not compete for attention. It does not demand emotional surrender. It stands, patient and composed, confident that its power lies in duration rather than impact. This confidence is what allows the painting to remain deeply unsettling long after more dramatic visions fade from memory. It does not shock once and release. It lingers, unfolding slowly within the viewer's mind. Chapter 7: What it reveals about human nature. As the layers of history, symbolism, and artistic intention begin to settle, the painting's gaze turns inward. It stops speaking primarily about Dante, or Bouguereau, or hell as a mythic location, and begins to address something more enduring. What unfolds quietly is a meditation on human nature itself, on the impulses, contradictions, and patterns that persist across time. At the center of this revelation is the idea that human beings are capable of extraordinary refinement and extraordinary cruelty at the same time. The same intelligence that perfects anatomy, poetry, and philosophy can also rationalize violence. Bouguereau does not separate these capacities. He binds them together. The beauty of the bodies and the brutality of their struggle are not opposites. They are inseparable expressions of the same human potential. The falsifier's punishment reveals something unsettling about deception. Their violence is not random. It is intimate and repetitive. They are trapped in a cycle of mutual violation, suggesting that deception ultimately turns inward. Lies demand maintenance. False identities require constant effort. Over time, they consume the self. The painting gives this psychological truth a physical form. The struggle never resolves because the impulse behind it never resolves. There is also a profound observation about control. The damned fight desperately, yet the structure of hell remains untouched. Their effort changes nothing. This reflects a recurring human pattern, intense emotional energy expended within systems that absorb it without consequence. Anger, resentment, and desperation become self-perpetuating rather than transformative. Above this struggle, the calm figures of Dante and Virgil introduce another aspect of human nature, the desire to understand rather than intervene. This impulse is not inherently cruel. It is often associated with wisdom, art, and reflection. Yet the painting quietly questions it. At what point does understanding become detachment? At what point does observation become complicity? The demon's presence sharpens this question. He represents not active cruelty, but comfortable distance. His enjoyment does not come from causing pain, but from watching it unfold. This is perhaps the most disturbing revelation of all. Human beings do not always need to be violent to participate in violence. Sometimes it is enough to accept it as normal, inevitable, or entertaining. The painting also speaks to the human need for order. Hell, in this vision, is meticulously organized. Every figure knows their role. Every punishment fits its cause. This order is reassuring in one sense. It suggests that the world makes sense, that actions have consequences. Yet it also reveals how order can coexist with suffering without questioning itself. Systems can be just and merciless at the same time. This duality reflects a deeper truth about morality. Human beings often seek clear structures to manage fear and uncertainty. They create hierarchies, rules, and judgments to contain chaos. But once established, these structures can become self-sustaining, resistant to empathy, and indifferent to individual pain. Bouguereau's hell functions smoothly. And that smoothness is precisely what makes it terrifying. There is no chaos here, no eruption of uncontrolled emotion. The violence is disciplined. The suffering is regulated. This suggests that cruelty does not always emerge from passion. It can emerge from calm certainty, from belief in correctness, from confidence in one's system. The viewer, standing before the painting, becomes part of this reflection. The act of looking mirrors the act of witnessing within the scene. The viewer is not attacked or implicated directly, yet the parallel is unavoidable. To look calmly at suffering rendered beautifully is to participate in the same tension the painting explores. The discomfort arises not from accusation, but from recognition. Human nature, as revealed here, is not monstrous. It is complex. It contains empathy and distance, creativity and destruction, order and indifference. Bouguereau does not resolve these contradictions. He allows them to coexist, just as they do within real human lives. This is why the painting resists simple moral interpretation. It does not say that humans are cruel, nor that they are noble. It suggests instead that humans are capable of constructing systems, artistic, moral, social, that reflect their highest ideals while quietly accommodating their darkest impulses. In this sense, Dante and Virgil in Hell becomes less a depiction of eternal punishment and more a mirror of human behavior. Hell is not an alien realm. It is a structured reflection of tendencies already present within the human mind. The realization unfolds slowly, often long after the viewer has turned away. It emerges in moments of quiet thought, when the image resurfaces not as a scene of violence, but as a question: where do I stand within this structure? As a struggler, a witness, or an observer who has learned to look away without discomfort? The painting does not answer. It leaves the question suspended, waiting. Chapter 8: Why it still speaks today. Despite the distance of time, Dante and Virgil in Hell has lost none of its quiet authority. It does not rely on contemporary references or fashionable ideas to remain relevant. Instead, it endures because it addresses structures of thought that have not changed, only shifted in appearance. The world that produced the painting may feel distant, but the human patterns it exposes remain deeply familiar. Modern life is filled with systems that function efficiently while producing harm. They are often impersonal, abstract, and justified by logic. Responsibility is diffused. No single figure appears monstrous, yet suffering persists. Bouguereau's Hell anticipates this condition with unsettling clarity. It shows a world where punishment is normalized, where cruelty does not require rage, only continuation. The demon's calm detachment feels especially contemporary. He does not intervene. He does not need to. His satisfaction comes from stability, from the knowledge that the system will continue without his effort. This mirrors modern experiences of distance, how suffering is consumed through screens, statistics, and stories, transformed into content rather than crisis. The posture of observation has become increasingly common, increasingly comfortable. Dante's presence, too, resonates with modern sensibilities. His role as observer, as one who seeks understanding through witnessing, reflects a deep cultural value placed on awareness and analysis. Yet the painting quietly questions whether understanding alone is enough. It suggests that knowledge without engagement can become a form of insulation. Even the falsifiers themselves feel modern. Their punishment arises from identity manipulation, deception, and the performance of selves. In a world saturated with curated images and constructed narratives, the anxiety surrounding authenticity has only intensified. Bouguereau's vision of bodies stripped of all illusion speaks directly to this unease. It suggests that the cost of sustained deception is not exposure by others, but erosion from within. The painting's refusal of spectacle also aligns with contemporary fatigue. Modern audiences are inundated with dramatic images of violence. Bouguereau offers something different: a slow, controlled image that does not shock once and disappear, but lingers. Its power lies in restraint. It trusts the viewer's capacity for sustained attention, a quality increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. There is also a modern resonance in the painting's beauty. Today, beauty is often treated with suspicion, especially when paired with suffering. Bouguereau forces a confrontation with that discomfort. He asks whether beauty itself is neutral, or whether it carries ethical weight. Is the problem the suffering, or the pleasure taken in observing it beautifully framed? This question feels especially sharp in an age where aestheticization is constant. Images are curated, filtered, and shared endlessly. Suffering is often made visually compelling in order to be seen at all. Bouguereau's painting stands as an early, unsettling example of this tension, long before digital culture gave it new forms. The painting also speaks to contemporary fears about permanence. The damned are trapped in an eternal present, unable to progress or change. This stasis echoes modern anxieties about cycles that seem impossible to break: social, political, personal. The sense of effort without outcome, of struggle that leads nowhere, feels painfully recognizable. Yet the painting does not despair. It does not collapse into cynicism. Its calm suggests endurance rather than resignation. It invites slow engagement, not instant reaction. In doing so, it offers a counterpoint to modern urgency. It asks the viewer to sit with discomfort rather than resolve it. This is perhaps why the painting continues to speak so clearly. It does not shout to be heard. It waits for the viewer to slow down enough to listen. In a world driven by speed and noise, this patience becomes its strength. Dante and Virgil in Hell remains relevant not because it mirrors modern life directly, but because it illuminates underlying patterns that persist beneath changing surfaces. It reveals how easily systems normalize suffering, how readily beauty can coexist with cruelty, and how observation can drift into indifference without ever announcing itself as such. The painting does not accuse the present. It simply recognizes it. And in that recognition, it continues its quiet work. Chapter 9: The Uncomfortable Realization. There comes a moment, often late in viewing, when the painting's quiet authority begins to press upon the mind with subtle insistence. It is not shock, not horror, nor even direct moral confrontation. It is something quieter, more insidious, the realization that the structures Bouguereau depicts are not confined to hell, nor to the distant past. They exist within the patterns of human thought, behavior, and society. They exist within the self. The damned, locked in endless struggle, are instantly recognizable. Not merely as figures of literature, but as embodiments of tendencies that reside in every human heart: envy, pride, deceit, and instinctual aggression. Watching them, one feels a mirror held up to inner impulses that civilization claims to manage, yet never entirely eradicates. The teeth sinking into flesh, the twisted bodies, the unstoppable repetition, these are not just punishments, but reflections of what humans enact on one another quietly, socially, psychologically, without even naming it. The calm figures of Dante and Virgil amplify this realization. They are reasoned, composed, observing, yet entirely passive. In their detachment lies an unspoken truth: even wisdom and understanding cannot halt cycles of harm entirely. Awareness is no guarantee of intervention, compassion, or change. One can perceive suffering clearly, recognize injustice, yet remain immobile, constrained by circumstance, principle, or fear. Bouguereau's work suggests that observation itself is a powerful, morally ambiguous act. The demon crystallizes the discomfort further. His presence is casual, his enjoyment understated. He is not the instigator of violence, he is the beneficiary of its consistency. This introduces the most unsettling idea of all: human systems, whether social, economic, or cultural, are maintained not only by active wrongdoing, but by passive acceptance. One does not need to strike to contribute to cruelty. One need only witness it, normalized, day after day, and allow it to continue unchallenged. The painting forces the viewer to recognize this uncomfortable complicity within themselves and within society. Time within the painting, like time in the human psyche, behaves differently. The damned are trapped in repetition, but this is mirrored in the mind of the viewer. One cannot unsee the precision of the bodies, the tension of the muscles, the deliberate calm of the onlookers. The image lodges itself quietly, like a thought that refuses to rest. The realization is not sudden. It seeps slowly, unspooling its implications, that human suffering is often systemic, that cruelty can be invisible in its continuity, that beauty does not absolve but can obscure. This awareness unsettles not because it is shocking, but because it is inevitable. It reflects patterns that exist in politics, in institutions, in personal relationships. It reflects moments when individuals perpetuate harm unknowingly, guided by routine, tradition, or self-interest. It reflects how even careful, cultured minds, like Dante's, like Bouguereau's, observe suffering with calm detachment and still fail to intervene. The quiet horror of the painting is therefore ethical, psychological, and deeply personal. It suggests that human beings are capable of extraordinary comprehension and refinement, yet still trapped by the very impulses they admire or tolerate. The perfect bodies, the careful composition, the relentless struggle, all are reminders that knowledge, skill, and observation are not shields against complicity or destructiveness. By the end of this reflection, the viewer is forced into confrontation with an uncomfortable truth: perfection and violence coexist, understanding and passivity coexist, observation and participation coexist. The painting does not offer solace or answers. It offers a mirror. And mirrors, by definition, reflect what is already there. Bouguereau's quiet insistence, his refusal to dramatize or moralize overtly, deepens this realization. There is no narrative closure, no climactic judgment. The damned will struggle forever. The poets will continue to observe. The demon will continue to enjoy. The viewer, too, is implicated in a system that is recognizable beyond the canvas, beyond the 19th century, and even beyond hell itself. This is the point at which the painting achieves its full weight. The aesthetic admiration that initially drew the viewer in becomes entangled with the moral, psychological, and existential insight that cannot be ignored. One recognizes that the calm beauty of the work, its precision and control, are inseparable from the horror it depicts. The realization lingers, unresolvable, uncomfortable, and inescapable. Chapter 10: What the Painting Never Explains. Even after prolonged contemplation, there remain aspects of Dante and Virgil in hell that elude comprehension. Bouguereau has rendered every muscle, every gesture, every expression with meticulous care, yet he leaves deliberate gaps, spaces where meaning, motivation, and outcome are suspended. The painting offers clarity without resolution, insight without instruction. It invites reflection, yet refuses to provide answers. One such ambiguity lies in the fate of the damned. Capocchio and Gianni Schicchi struggle endlessly, yet the painting never indicates whether their suffering teaches them, transforms them, or simply persists. Unlike narrative art that imposes cause and effect, Bouguereau allows the punishment to exist in a perpetual present. The viewer can imagine consequence, but it is never confirmed. This refusal destabilizes expectation. It mirrors life itself, where suffering is often opaque, and outcomes are uncertain. The painting also withholds explanation of motive. Why do these individuals act as they do? The original sins are known from Dante's text: deception, impersonation, but Bouguereau does not elaborate. He is uninterested in justification or confession. The focus is the act, the struggle, and the body. This absence shifts the burden of interpretation to the viewer. We are left to confront the raw interplay of instinct, intellect, and consequence, unmediated by narrative closure. The calm of Dante and Virgil is similarly enigmatic. They observe, yet their silence raises questions. Are they merely witnesses, or do they represent the limits of understanding? Can insight coexist with detachment? Bouguereau offers no commentary, allowing the quiet presence of these figures to haunt as much as the violence below. Their composure provokes reflection on the ethical and psychological limits of observation itself. Even the demon resists explanation. His amusement is subtle, his authority unquestioned. He enforces no punishment, intervenes in no conflict, yet his presence alters the scene profoundly. Is he a figure of justice, of inevitability, or of aesthetic satisfaction? The painting does not decide. The ambiguity is intentional. It reminds the viewer that control can exist without moral clarity, and that observers, human or otherwise, can shape perception simply by existing. The spatial composition, so precise and controlled, is another element of mystery. The vertical hierarchy, the proximity of the figures, the careful illumination, all suggest intention, yet the painting does not dictate interpretation. The viewer senses meaning, yet that sense remains tentative. The painting encourages patience, repeated viewing, and reflection, offering insight only gradually, as if its deepest truths are revealed slowly, over time, rather than all at once. Perhaps most importantly, the painting never explains its emotional resonance. Why does the calm beauty evoke unease? Why does the measured composition amplify horror rather than soothe it? These questions have no definitive answer. Bouguereau deliberately intertwines attraction and repulsion, harmony and violence, precision and instinct. The result is a tension that cannot be fully resolved, a feeling that persists after viewing, silently challenging understanding. In leaving these gaps, Bouguereau invites the viewer into a dialogue with the painting, with Dante, with history, and with the complexities of human nature. The unanswered questions are not oversights. They are the point. Life itself, and the human condition it reflects, is rarely fully explainable. The painting acknowledges this truth elegantly, without didacticism or closure. Ultimately, the work remains open-ended because life is. We are left to sit with uncertainty, to inhabit the tension between understanding and incomprehension, to recognize beauty and horror as inseparable. Bouguereau offers not answers, but space for thought, reflection, and quiet contemplation. In this space, the painting continues to live. It endures precisely because it resists finality. It whispers rather than shouts, asking the viewer not to resolve it, but to enter it, to experience it, and to carry its questions forward into the world beyond the frame. The unresolved mysteries, the silent presences, and the intricate balance of violence and beauty all serve to remind us that some truths are meant to be lived with rather than solved.